Dear friends and dear cyber friends, that because it goes on live now, I welcome everybody to Artos House. Also welcome our guests and our partners that came from different places of the world to be here tonight. This event tonight, Love in the Anthropocene, is part of the Continuum project, which is co-financed by Creative Europe, the program Creative Europe, and the Deputy Ministry of Culture here in Cyprus. I know you are very curious to see what we want to hear today. So just to give just one line, what is a Continuum project? It's a project where we see all knowledge related to planet Earth in a cross-disciplinary approach. That's why, because we investigate to see the post-human, how it's going to be evolved, human behaviors that impact the planet and everything. We mix, for example, today we'll have an introduction that we'll have from quantum computing, in quantum mechanics in general, and then we can shift then to genetics, and then we can see this how research in art could combine all this together, so you can have another way to create awareness, to communicate ideas that might be more accessible to the citizens. Now, first of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Marios Christodoulou, who is an independent researcher and group leader in the Institute of Quantum Optics and Quantum Information in Vienna, and assistant professor to the Cyprus Institute. Then we have Dr. Konstantinos Deltas, who is a professor of medicine and molecular genetics, the Faculty of Medicine, the University of Cyprus, and director of the Biobank Cyprus. And we'll hear more about, so he's a banker actually. So we'll hear about that. And then we have Dr. Daphne Dragona, who is a curator, researcher, and author. And with Daphne, we'll close this session of the panel, and then we can have a short discussion with questions from the audience. Also, I want to welcome Pavel, who is the leader of the program, who came from Prague, thank you, and our partners from Ukraine that participate in this European program. Welcome here. All right, so without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Marios Christodoulou. Thank you.
Okay, how do we make this show there? Good. Can you see? Sort of. Yeah, okay. Maybe we could reduce the front lights, but if it's too difficult, it's okay. C'est πιο ψηλός. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So first of all, thank you very much, Achilleas and Elisa, for organizing this very nice event and for inviting me. So I was asked to talk a bit about quantum in 15 minutes, which is not very easy. So I'll try to give you, assuming that you're not experts at all and you don't know anything about quantum, I'll just try to give you a very small taste of the weirdness of it and the miracle of it and what's, counterintuitive about it. Perhaps you've heard that quantum mechanics is strange, which is true in the sense that we don't really understand it intuitively. So I'll explain the principle of quantum superposition, what we call quantum superposition, using this idealized experiment. This is called a Mach-Zehnder interferometer. I'll take you through what's going on here step by step, and then I'll ask you to give me your guess on what's going to be coming out, where the question marks are. All right? Oops, I just gave you the answer. We started from the middle. Anyway. So that's okay. All right. So let me tell you what this thing is. Imagine that you have some sort of particle, the orange thing, and it's gonna hit a beam splitter. So that's a semi-reflecting mirror. It's something that you have 50% probability of the thing to go through or to be reflected. You can imagine it like a mirror, and this is light, and it's a half reflecting mirror. So half of the beam goes through and half goes out. But in any case, it has this behavior, which you can verify. You can just throw the thing many times and measure to see where you get the particle, and you see you get 50-50. Now, the blue thing is a normal mirror, or if you want, is something that always reflects the thing. This is just to take it up. And then we're going to put a second semi-reflecting mirror. So once the particle goes there, then again it's going to have 50-50 to get reflected or to go through. All right, and it's going to be the same thing for the other path, the other branch. So when the particle gets reflected on the first mirror, it's going to reach the second mirror, and then it's going to either go through or it's going to get reflected out of that mirror. Okay? Now, the question is, when I put everything together, what are we supposed to get? How many times does a particle go up, and how many times does it go on the right?
Percentage?
Yes, probability of detection up or that way. What would you guess? 50-50. Anybody else?
12.5.
Sorry?
12.5.
No, I don't know how you thought about that. But okay, 50-50, 12.5. Sorry? Looks like 50-50, right? So if you actually do this experiment with single particles, so fundamental particles, like an atom or a photon or an electron or anything, what happens is that you get 100%. It goes that way, all right? And it never comes out. Now, this is what they noticed like 100 years ago, and the experimentalists were very, very perplexed by this behavior, precisely because it doesn't fit the intuition of the particle being actually a particle like we imagine it, like a rock or a billiard ball. This type of behavior is something that is not completely alien to physicists, not at all, in fact. It's something that you expect if you're dealing with waves, all right? Because in waves you can have this sort of behavior, because if you have two waves coming that are out of phase, like the top of the picture there, they're going to add up to nothing, to no oscillation, to no wave, and when they are in phase, they are going to add up. So if you try to imagine what's going on with waves, then you can imagine how this might work, because when it gets reflected on the first mirror, it's going to pick up a phase difference, and then you have what we call destructive interference for the vertical output and constructive interference for the horizontal output. However, thank you. However, you cannot explain fully what's happening with waves either, with physical waves, because if what was going on is that it was a wave, then when you would go just after the first green thing, the first semi-reflecting mirror, and you try to detect the particle, if it was a wave, you shouldn't be getting that it's either here or either there. You should be getting half clicks, because half of the amplitude should go through and half should get reflected. So if you've ever heard that about the wave-particle duality in quantum mechanics, this is what people refer to, that somehow you have a situation where the physics seem to be sort of like a wave, on the output at least, but not completely, not in what's going on in the middle, while in the beginning and at the end, you have a particle behavior because you're really just seeing it being there or here. So people usually say when, they talk in a popularized way about quantum mechanics that fundamentally particles or pieces of matter behave both as a particle and as a wave. And this is what they have in mind. More precisely, though, fundamentally matter does not behave neither as a particle or as a wave. Okay, it has this strange behavior, and this is what we call a quantum superposition. So the way physicists found to describe this physics is essentially to mix the known physics from how you describe, let's say, collisions of billiard balls, so from particles, and how you describe waves. And they came up with a sort of description that imagines a probability wave. All right? So it's a wave in some mathematical sense that is going to do this type of interference. And then this just gives you the probability of it coming out or not. So essentially, what you're doing is mixing wave physics with particle physics, trying to describe this strange phenomenon. Now, intuitively, what is going on and the way we imagine this is that the particle is going at both paths at the same time, so to say. Its probability wave function is doing that. And that's what we call a quantum superposition. And it's one of the main reasons why people are excited about quantum computing, because in a sense, this gives you the possibility to do a sort of parallel processing in a natural way. Just nature behaves like that by itself. Now, weirder things happen in quantum mechanics. The hallmark of quantum mechanics, the most, let's say, notable phenomenon is something called quantum entanglement, which I will very, superficially try to outline to you what this is now that we've discussed the Mach Center. Now, imagine that you have two of these apparatuses, all right, next to each other. And imagine that you make them interact in some way. So, for instance, we can imagine that each particle is charged, has electric charge, and so when you put two things together with electric charge, they attract each other, so they feel each other. Now, if you do this and you play around with the parameters correctly, how much charge, how much distance, you can have a situation where we say that the two particles get entangled. What that means is that, first of all, you're going to start getting, you repeat this many times, and you check where are the particles coming out. Are they coming horizontally or are they coming out vertically? You note your results, all right? So these are the correlations between the measurements in the two particles. And you note something very strange, that even there are cases where you could make them interact, and then you could take these apparatuses and take them very far away, all right? And still, you see that there are correlations between the two that you would not be able to explain with our classical intuition, all right, the way that we all think. What that means in practice is that you're going to have situations where you go and you measure the right thing, and if you find that it went out horizontally, then you know with probability 1 that when you go and measure the other thing, it will also come out horizontally, all right? And so this is what Feynman called spooky action at a distance, and it's also called quantum non-locality. And it's a very big topic, because it's this is really the resource that would allow quantum computing to do more things, because you can act on many places, in a sense, at the same time. Even though you're not violating, you're not able to send actually information at superluminal speeds. But let me not get into that. So there's something beautiful about that, because for 70 years now, people have been trying to understand what's going on there intuitively. What are these particles doing? Why are they behaving like that? Because they're behaving like one system. Even if you separate them spatially, you put them far away from each other, they still continue to behave as one system. You do something here, and it's like you do something to both of them. And many eminent physicists have tried to make sense of this, and they were trying to imagine some sort of mechanism that underlies this process. And then a beautiful piece of mathematics came, which is called the Bell's theorem, which I'll just tell you what it's saying, which I'm caricaturing a bit, but this is really the gist of it. So you can write down a piece of mathematics where you prove that you cannot have all of these three things. It just gives you a logical contradiction. So the first thing is the thing that you would actually go and measure in the experiment, this type of correlations that I was talking about. So you go and you do the experiment and you see that. And then, given that you cannot have all three, you're stuck in a dilemma. You can drop both of the other two things, which you don't want to, but you need to drop at least one of the two. And both are important, psychologically important. There are things that you're attached to intuitively. The first one is that you can, because it's an experiment that you do many times and you do statistics, that you can independently prepare each run. And philosophers call this the free choice. The other is to assume local realism, which I'll tell you what that means in a moment. And so people drop typically, the consensus is that you drop C, all right? You drop local realism. And this is really why quantum mechanics is so counterintuitive, because our intuition is local realistic, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So local realistic is that you imagine that there is some underlying process that is, for instance, like a wave in the sea. There's, the molecules of the water pushing the next molecule, and they're oscillating, and this makes some sort of wave that is propagating. Or maybe we imagine something like that in our head, that there must be some sort of particles that are touching each other and interacting and give rise to this effect. What that theorem tells you is that any description, in principle, that you will try to make, any theory that would rely on such type of explanations of the effect, will be logically inconsistent, which is pretty incredible. Now, there is a very long philosophical debate of what might be going on, what would be the right way to think about things. Let me tell you just a simple explanation from me, a bit silly, why this is the case, okay? So, why shouldn't it be the case? Why do we want to have an intuitive explanation? We are, after all, 0.03% different genetically from a bonobo. Correct me if I'm wrong, I just saw it on Google. And so our intuition has developed based on our interactions with the world, how we couple to our environment, how we interact with nature. And so, we think in terms of rocks and in terms of objects and in terms of waves that we see in the sea. And so maybe it's too much to ask for an intuitive understanding of how the world behaves at this very fundamental level, which is so far from our everyday experience. It's more a question of how does it behave, and then you discover how it behaves. And since 100 years now, experiments are way beyond our everyday experience. So nature is counterintuitive. And I leave you with this quote, and that was it. should I take the computer off? All right.
Thank you, Christodoulou. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. I would like now to invite Dr. Konstantinos Deltas for his presentation. Sunny, you can switch to the presentation.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for this very kind invitation to give a presentation here at Artos. But I was reminded that many years ago, I was involved with the granting a prize to Artos for its contribution to science and society. And I would like to start by saying that Dr. Christodoulou convinced me once again that quantum mechanics is not for everybody to understand. So I was surprised when I was invited to talk in this event. The title, Life in the Anthropocene, was something totally flying out of my mind. I had to go to the Google and try to understand what Anthropocene is, although it sounds like Anthropogeno, like Ologeno, and whatever other Ologeno. But in any case, I had to go to Google and find, and to understand what that is all about. In any case, I was also asked to speak about my field of expertise, and let me explain or inform you that I started my life in science as a pharmacist. Then I studied biochemistry. And while I was doing that, I studied molecular biology and molecular genetics. And I ended up working for half of my life in human molecular and medical genetics. And then I got involved with the biobanking. So yes, I am a banker. And I will explain what that means. So I am quite remote from the quantum mechanics and from the life in the Anthropocene. But in any case, I was asked to explain what I do, and I think you will find it interesting and useful. And towards the end, I will also spend a few minutes expressing some thoughts I made regarding the Anthropocene. And maybe there's going to be some discussion later that I might or might not be able to contribute further. So this is a QR code that you can use if you wish to get into the biobank and become a volunteer, because we are inviting volunteers to enrich our biobank. And our motto is that we are investing in biobanking, we are investing in a healthier Cyprus. Now, what is a biobank? It's a bank. But instead of storing money, we are storing data, personal, demographic, and clinical data, and DNA, or other biological material, in a very, very systematic and confidential and careful way to be used for research. So biobanks are medical research infrastructures which facilitate research by giving material and data to any researcher. Biobanks was one of the 10 ideas that Time magazine decided that they are changing the world back in 2009. So biobanks are changing the world indeed. We started the first biobank in Cyprus. I was involved in that. I took the initiative I got some funding, good funding back then, in 2011 from the Cyprus Research Foundation. And we started the first biobank, and then in 2019 we got better funding from the European Commission to start to enhance, to upgrade the biobank of Cyprus. And one of the things I like saying about biobanks is that I can say it's similar to running a marathon. When you run a marathon, everybody is waiting on the line for the person to shoot, okay? And while everybody's waiting there, you are 10 kilometers away already because you were smart. And being smart with the biobanks means you have access to biobank, therefore you can go there and directly ask and get material and data without having to collect it yourself, which is a very expensive and time-consuming business. So we started in 2019 with 15 million euro from the European Commission, another 15 million from the government of Cyprus, and another 8 million from the University of Cyprus. And we have advanced partners, the Medical University of Graz, the BMRI ERIC, which is a consortium of European biobanks, and Talos, which is a small enterprise in Cyprus. No need to go into details of our premises. We are located for the time being, we are located at the Medical School of the University of Cyprus, although we are making plans already, we have blueprints to build up a new building to host the entire Center of Excellence. Because what I didn't mention is that with this funding, we were supposed to create a new Center of Excellence in research and innovation. And our Center of Excellence is the biobank.cy, as you can see, up at the right. It's a Center of Excellence in biobanking and biomedical research. So by storing data and material, the interest we get is not money, but is new knowledge, discovery of new knowledge, new techniques, new diagnostic methods, and saving lives. This is the interest we get. So we are located at the Medical School of the University of Cyprus. We have places for enrolling volunteers, so we are inviting volunteers, people of the general population who can come and share with us data about their health and DNA and urine. This is the laboratory of the biobank. We have -80 degrees Celsius freezers that we use for storing material. We have a satellite place in the Kennedy Avenue for enrolling people and have offices as well, more offices, equipment, state-of-the-art equipment for DNA analysis, and much, much more. We can do complete analysis of your DNA in days or hours and days, something that when I was a student, it took me 3 years to find one single mutation in a gene. Now my students can do tens of samples in a day for many genes. The procedure is very simple. You fix an appointment. A research nurse is waiting for you. They explain you what the project is all about. You sign a consent form, and then you answer a long questionnaire with questions about yourself, your family, your health, and then they take some blood and urine. We store DNA, plasma, serum, and urine. These are many, many research projects we have in progress. No need to go into details here, but several people, not only my group, are interested in using our infrastructure for storing their samples because we offer them good procedures, we offer them safety, confidentiality, and we comply by the GDPR and by the ethics. Okay? We participate to the Genome of Europe, which is a pan-European project for sequencing the DNA of up to 1 million Europeans. And we participate in this as a country because we have this biobank infrastructure. Otherwise, we would not have been able to participate as a country. We have sequenced already 146 Cypriots for the first time, and we're analyzing the data. We're preparing a publication on the genetic morbidity of Cypriots. What do we have in our DNA collectively as a population which predisposes us to genetic disorders? This is the map of Cyprus showing more or less that we have samples representing the entire island based on the origin of the volunteers, not based on their address, okay? Because we know we live in one place, but we were born by parents who came from Bafos, Kerinia, whatever. This is a small checkup we do for every volunteer. We give back a small checkup on blood levels, lipid profile, kidney function. We give it back to the volunteers for free, and we also store it in the biobank in the database. We have very sophisticated softwares and management systems to manage all of this information in a confidential way. No need to go into... we call the DNA project, the study of the DNA project of Cypriots, we call it CyProm. We are already on version 3 with these 1,446 individuals. Now, what actionable findings means is that doing this analysis for that many people, nearly for every one of them, we find one actionable finding. Actionable finding means that you can use this information to do something about your health, okay? It refers to a genetic defect, okay? It may affect your health, it may not. We are in position to evaluate that. And the aim is to give this information back to the volunteer so that he or she can do something about it, himself, herself, or for their children. And of course, and you see here, for example, mutant genes we found for cancer predisposition. Now, coming to the Anthropocene. But before I switch to the Anthropocene, let me say that it's a very expensive project. We have about 50 employees at the moment, technologists, administrative people, postdoctoral fellows, students, working on different projects for humans and also mice. We have mouse models for kidney disorder. And we try to publish a lot. And we are constantly trying to find more money to maintain this operation. One thing I didn't mention, and I would like to say a word, is that through this activity, we have developed molecular diagnostic services. Many doctors, kidney doctors, nephrologists, cardiologists, pediatricians, neurologists, and others referred patients to our lab for a genetic test because they suspect the disease might be hereditary. Okay, they inherited it from their parents. So they want to know that, and many times, unless you do a genetic test, you can never be absolutely certain what the diagnosis is. So we offer this service to the doctors and the patients. Now, Anthropocene. I found these statements in Google. In my effort to understand what this is, so relating to or denoting the current geological age, viewed as the period during which human activity has been the dominant influence on climate and the environment. This is something we are viewing already. We are living through it. Everybody knows that. We've become a major force of nature in this new Anthropocene epoch. Anthropocene epoch, both Greek words. The current geological age is viewed as the period during which human activity has been the dominant influence on climate, on the environment. And some geologists argue that the Anthropocene began with the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. Quite interesting. And the Anthropocene is sometimes used to simply describe the time during which humans have had substantial impact on our planet. On our planet. A planet in a universe with trillions of planets and stars. So whether or not we are in a new geological age, we are part of a complex global system, and the evidence of our impact on it has become clear. My comment is that what is the effect of human activity? It's a question. What is the effect of human activity not only on the environment on planet Earth, but also specifically on the living species of Homo sapiens? Because it's true that the human activity has an impact on the planet Earth, on the climate of our planet, but it also has a great impact on our species, and not only, actually. But being a geneticist, I have a reason to concentrate on Homo sapiens. Of course, I can expand on this maybe later if there is interest and questions. Now, from the continuum statement that you sent me, the document that you sent me, I extracted this. The advancement of science and technology has expanded our understanding of life, encompassing both organic and inorganic realms. This includes a new generation of inorganic living forms. The question is mine. Such as software, algorithms, autonomous agents, synthetic life, and artificial intelligence. So somebody refers to living forms which are inorganic. You have to explain this to me. Because as far as I know, there's no inorganic living form unless you say it in a poetic diathesis, which is okay. And then my comment is the norm on the universe is no life as we know it on planet Earth. In the universe. The most part of the universe is hydrogen. This is not my discovery, of course, somebody else's. By far, the most abundant element is hydrogen, the smallest, simplest element. One proton, one electron, and everything else just inorganic matter. I hope the physicists can agree with this, but I am open to discussions. And the universe was not made or created to host life. And unless you really give me good arguments, convincing arguments to convince me, no. The universe was not made or created by whatever force or energy to host life. Life is just another phenomenon like many, many others, like quantum mechanics, for example. It is a complex, but many phenomena are complex, perhaps even more complex than life, and still not fully understood by humans. Life is the result of chemical reactions, including thinking, pain, dreaming, even feelings, are simply results of chemical reactions. The phenomenon of life does affect the environment. It does affect the environment, and life is part of the environment we live in on planet Earth. The environment does not care about life, and planet Earth does not care about life. It just happened. It may have happened elsewhere, I don't know. And then, and I think this is my last slide, Achille. And then I went back to my records and I found one document I had written a few years ago on evolution. I think I had written this document and I published it in the open press, public press, on the annual day of DNA. So Charles Darwin, theory of evolution, I think we all know something about it. And never forget also Alfred Russel Wallace, who also was a contemporary to Darwin, Charles Darwin, and he also described the phenomenon of natural selection and evolution, except that he did not manage to project himself as good as Darwin did. So we know something about natural selection, and we know that those who survive and they give offspring of the next generation are not necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They are those who can adapt to the environment they live in. It's as simple as that. Now, that's for the natural selection. And this is my personal view now on contemporary human selection. According to this, the selection nowadays, and when I say selection here, I mean people who live, they are born, they live, they leave behind offspring to live in the next generation. It is not based solely, absolutely, only on natural selection the way Darwin described it. But it's based also, and to a great extent, on logic, science, and technology. It is based on better medicine. It is based on vaccination. It is based on better conditions of life, better quality of life, meaning good shelter, clean water, healthier food, healthier environment, antibiotics. So selection is based on all of this as well. And many of us survived childhood. We survived childhood because of all the above. You know, if you go back 100 years, maybe up to 20% of young children would not reach adolescence. They would die of various reasons. And if you talk to your grandparents, they will tell you that nearly everybody, every woman back then, had lost 1 or 2 or 3 children at very, very young age. Not because of very, very severe diseases as we call them today, but because they could get an infection, very simple one, no antibiotics, they died. No doctors, no medicine, no good quality of life, and they died. So it's true that many of us, I see it with my grandchildren, for example. Every other day they are at the pediatrician. Nearly every other day, or every other week. So in my view, all of this is part of the Anthropocene, in the sense that human behavior, human attitude, human action has an effect on the environment and on himself, on human species. And the human species is just one of the many. The smartest, perhaps. Well, I'm not sure if it's the smartest, but it's the only one that we are the only ones that managed to develop civilization, culture, poetry, theater. No other living species managed to do that. So technology will go on and nothing can stop it, only death. Climate change evolves to be bad for life. Okay. There's no unethical science or technology. There are unethical scientists. And I feel we are very lucky that there has not been a third nuclear explosion yet in human populations. Very lucky. And I'm not sure we will be that lucky for the next months or years. The conclusions do not concern the Anthropocene. Let me just say very quickly, very briefly, that if you haven't thought about it, please come forward and become volunteers to this biobank, which is going to enable us to do many, many things that we cannot do without it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Deltas. That, of course, reminds me of a quote from Einstein who said, I don't know how the Third World War will be, but I know that the Fourth World War will be with bows and stones. So, hope he's wrong. So, I would like to invite now Dr. Daphne Dragona, and the stage is yours.
Okay, oops. All right, thanks. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Achillea and Elisa, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure working with you and being here in Nicosia. I am myself a curator, as Achillea said, and what I have mostly worked on is digital art and culture. And the last few years I have changed a little bit my focus towards the ambiguous role of technology on the environment. So somehow I'm interested in how we are trying to solve through advanced technology the issues that technology itself has to an extent created, and we don't at all try to change somehow our habits. And I tried to study this through different readings, but also through art. So what I will talk about has to do a bit with the work that I've been doing, let's say, the last few years, with a specific focus and summarized. And also, of course, with reference to what we're discussing here, not today, but more broadly as part of this program. So what happens nowadays when we address the climate crisis is that I think that there is a certain degree of complexity that we are confronted with, and that sometimes it's even difficult to comprehend and to perceive, because we are exposed to different facts and numbers that manifest, let's say, the changes in the atmosphere, in the ocean, in what happens in the forests. And this is what has caused also, to a great extent, what we have come to call climate anxiety. And in this kind of period that we're going through, advanced technology is kind of promising to bring possible solutions. And this is how we came to see somehow to address nature in a way as an infrastructure, as something that we can program. This is something that a scholar that I really admire her work, Jennifer Gabrys, discusses a lot. So what does it mean to see, in a way, nature program as an infrastructure? This means that basically we might be using sensors, satellites, drones, artificial intelligence, technologies that allow us basically to monitor, to study, to predict changes that happen in the environment. And this is something that we notice in the forests, but also in cities. So for instance, in smart forests, we do have these technologies that help us monitor the changes nowadays. But also we have smart cities that are promised to become sustainable thanks to the infrastructures that will be in a way used to protect and restore urban nature. And this is, in my opinion, a bit of a scary picture about how the Hellinikon in Athens, in the Athenian Riviera, is going to evolve, thanks to a great extent to smart technologies. Well, I'm not going to talk about it here, but you can find a lot about it online. So the questions that I want to raise is like, when we are confronted with a kind of a new techno-ecological reality, if we can call it like that, what does that mean? What do these new kind of formations of programmed nature cultures mean? And my main interest is like a more simple question about what happens when the technological and the biological, they come together. Are we kind of getting closer to nature, to the living environment, or are we kind of distancing ourselves from it? What from the two, in a way, happens? And the interesting thing is that this in a way, takes us back to the 60s again, No, it came back, okay. And as again, Jennifer Gabrys, that I already mentioned before, writes, somehow it's already back in the 60s, and she's quoting McLuhan here, that Earth became programmable. And this happened when the first satellite, Sputnik, appeared. And somehow we gathered all this information and we could understand a lot about Earth's atmosphere. And this, some years later, was connected also to the first images of the Earth that appeared, and we kind of got to understand even better what it means to see Earth from afar and to have it, to really see it as a kind of a living planet. And this slowly also led to many kind of interesting writings and theories. And here I have like a very classic reference, the reference of James Lovelock, who had written about Gaia, or Gaia, as we would call it in Greek, and who basically talked about Earth as a superorganism. And here he had, in a way, embraced a theory from the father of geology, of James Hutton, who had used kind of this kind of word, superorganism, in a way to build an analogy between the circulation of blood in the human body and the circulation of the nutrient elements of the earth. And different scholars, other scholars, talked about the earth as a system of systems. This is what Capra, for instance, did, who studied biological networks, and he was more working on network theory. And all this kind of helped us to a great extent understand Earth, also like as a well-functioned, in a way, engine, if we want to call it like that. But then there is a kind of a slight issue there that Bruno Latour has discussed in this wonderful kind of book that summarizes some of his lectures. They are basically his lectures, Facing Gaia. And so then he says that, okay, this technomorphism has an issue, because if we address Gaia as a system of systems, or as a spaceship, or as an engine, then it's like we're expecting somebody to come and take control of it. And in the case of people like James Lovelock, this of course was not at all the idea, or Capra, but in cases like the ones that we're facing the last 1 or 2 decades that have to do with geoengineering, and with planetary scale interventions, we can imagine a bit what it means really to try and control and affect and change in a way the atmosphere of the Earth so that the humans can continue living comfortably on it. So what I will try to do, I'll just summarize here a little bit my introduction that is more theoretical, or my first part rather that it's more theoretical, is that I will try to kind of answer this question about if we are kind of getting closer or if we are more detached through some examples from artworks, by artists who might be working with technology or referring to technology, and these are also from an exhibition that I did 2 or 3 years ago. So the examples are like, for instance, here we have a work from metallurgy. It's called Hydromancy. The metallurgy, they're basically a couple, a duo. They work in UK, and they are very interested in infrastructures that they use to monitor the environment. What they did for this piece is that they went to the National Oceanographic Center in Southampton, and there they basically studied the infrastructures that are being used to model and to monitor also changes in the ocean. So in the video, we kind of see these technologies and also the lab that is being used as a simulation. But at the same time, they very much underline through the work and through the voiceover that they have that somehow the ocean itself has an agency. So they approach the ocean as a kind of a sentient agent, and they kind of highlighted the role that it plays with its ecosystems. And something that I forgot to mention, and I would like to note now, is that when we forget the relationships that they are between nature and culture, if we want to use these words, is that we forget also how technology itself is dependent on the Earth. So the most classic reference that you might have, of course, have heard of is like how artificial intelligence itself is depending on the resources of the Earth, and how it is basically a kind of an extractive technology. And we need to remember this and to address this whenever we say that this is how the issues that we have are going to be confronted. Now moving on, and having somehow this example that had to do with the oceans in our minds, this is a work that discusses a kind of a different kind of system or engines that it's very important for all human life, and this is the forest. And it's a work by a Brazilian artist called Barbara Marcel. And what Barbara Marcel did is that she had gone to the Amazon, to the part which is in Brazil, excuse me, and there's this huge tower which is 300 meters high. It's the Amazon Tall Tower Observatory, as it's called, ATO. And of course, this tower, as you may imagine, is used to study the interactions between the forest, the soils, the atmosphere in the region. The way it happens is that this has been funded by a big research program, and researchers from Germany collaborate with researchers in Brazil. Barbara was interested as part of the work that she did to kind of study what happens, how it is to climb this tower, what do the scientists say about what they learn. And this is what she did, but she kind of studied how infrastructures are used while also talking with the local people, the indigenous people that really work there, that really live in the forest. And they somehow are also close to this tower. So she's kind of presenting and discussing what happens when these two different groups of people, the scientists and the people the locals that live there and that kind of have to give their own struggles for what happens in the Amazon, when they come together and they exchange these forms of knowledge. So it's we learn a lot about how these relations can change our understanding of what happens in the environment. And these are some images from the film. But it doesn't have to be necessarily about technology. Sometimes we can learn a lot from what the Earth itself and the elements that we find in Earth can teach us. So Benera and Stefan are two artists, a couple, that they're using the word proxy, that is very often used in technology, to refer to pollen. Because what they discovered at their research is that somehow pollen can inform us about past climates. So if you find pollen in soil, this is an indicator of past vegetation changes, and it can help us reconstruct and understand global climate dynamics. So for this reason, they decided to collect pollen grains from different areas in Southern Europe. There are issues with drought. And in order to kind of exactly remind us of how pollen can teach us about the past climates, they kind of formed these kind of geological kind of core samples purposely. So it's a work about the memory of disappearing flora and about how pollen can be used as scientific material at the same time. And a different example here by artist Matthias Fritsch, who is kind of creating living sculptures from fungi in order to showcase the unique role that fungi play in the carbon cycle. And what it's talking about relations, which is exactly what I want to underline in this talk, this work reminds us of, let's say, the close bonds that mushrooms, fungi build with plants, of how they work as decomposers, of how important they are in the circle of life. But there's also something else that has to do with how this work was kind of set up and how it was dismantled at the end. Because, I mean, there were like 6 different pieces of mushrooms, and they all had like almost a week, a life of a week. So the visitors could observe them, they could see them. And when, let's say, their time had come, then they could be collected in order to be cooked. And then when the whole installation, when we were taking down the exhibition, the bags could be used by people who were interested to kind of cultivate their own mushrooms. So it's a kind of another interesting way to think about how relations are built. And to end here, I would like to now bring in some information about the exhibition that you will also be able to see in the weekend at the planetarium. And this is like the new video installation of Matthias, which will open on Saturday. And the installation is called Restless Earth. And it reminds us of how our world is basically interconnected. To be more precise, Matthias refers to the fundamental elements of matter, so to earth, to water, fire, and air. And he pays attention specifically to the encounters and the transformations between these elements. Because the problem with elemental theory in the past was that the way it was understood, it was like a bit like they were all separate. But this has been rediscussed. And this is also what we see in Matthias' work. So he presents a world in motion, basically, but he also introduces the multiple agents, like the animals, the plants, the fungi, the seas, the lands, everything that somehow, in a way, has life. And he also presents, like, in a way, their ongoing interactions and transformations. In a way, the work of Matthias and the works of the other artists that I mentioned, and the work of many, many other artists that I could not mention in such a short talk, I think remind us of the importance of all the relations that keep the work together in a way, and that we somehow tend to forget. It is unavoidable that as we use digital devices so much in our everyday life, but also in science and technology, our relationship with the living environment, of course, changes. But at the same time, we do need to still be attentive to these bonds that are found within the world, but also between different worlds, human, more than human, even non-human. And we need to take into consideration, in my opinion, the plurality of agencies and the plurality of temporalities, of knowledges, that are found within this kind of technocultural entanglements that we're dealing with nowadays. So I think I would like to end with this relatively old quote by Donna Haraway that said in her Companion Species Manifesto that the relation is the smallest unit of analysis. And in my opinion, the one that we need to keep returning to if we really want infrastructures that can sustain multiple forms of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daphne. Okay, now we realize that though three different approaches of seeing life, it comes with three different stories. Actually, it brings some new content that lays in between. So I would like to invite now the presenters, the speakers, to sit on the table so we can accept for the time we have now like three or four questions, and then can continue outside with wine. And I would like to also invite you to stay in the concert which is following this event here, which is quantum using computers, and with a lot of artists from different countries. Thank you very much. And this live session comes to an end now because we cannot have the questions online without all your consent. Thank you.